The wind howled like a wounded beast, tearing through the frozen ridges of the snowfield, carrying shards of ice that stung my face like shrapnel. I was alone, my boots crunching through the endless white, each step a battle against the cold that clawed at my bones. My rifle slung across my back felt heavier than ever, not from its weight but from the lives it had taken, lives I could still see in the quiet moments when the gunfire stopped. It was February 1999, in the jagged mountains of Kosovo, and I was a soldier in a war that had already stolen my youth. My name is Marco, and this is the story of how I survived the snowfield, only to return home as a stranger to the one person who mattered most. It started with a scream, not mine, but hers. A young woman no older than 20, her scarf soaked in blood, clutching a child who no longer moved. I saw her from the ridge, silhouetted against the burning village below, her cries swallowed by the roar of mortars. I wanted to run to her, to do something, anything, but my orders were clear. Hold the position, stay hidden, survive. That moment haunts me, not just because of her pain, but because it was the first time I realized I might never make it back. The war in Kosovo was a beast that devoured everything: homes, families, hope. And yet here I am telling you this because I did survive. But survival came at a cost, one I didn't understand until I stood face to face with my brother Dragon and saw no recognition in his eyes. What does it mean to return from war, only to find that the person you fought for no longer knows you? What happens when the face in the mirror is yours but the soul behind it feels like a ghost? These are the questions that linger, the ones that will unravel as you hear my story. There's a truth buried in these memories, a secret I carried through the snowfields of Kosovo, one that changed how I see survival, loyalty, and even love. It's a truth that might make you question what you'd do to stay alive and what you'd sacrifice to keep those you love safe. War strips you bare, exposing the raw edges of who you are. It shows you the fragility of life, how a single moment, a bullet, a bomb, a choice can shatter everything you thought you knew. It forces you to confront the strength it takes to keep going when the world around you is collapsing. My story isn't just about the battles I fought in Kosovo. It's about the war I carried home, the one that still rages in my dreams. It's about the boy I was, the man I became, and the brother who looked at me like I was a stranger. I'm asking you to stay with me, to hear this story to its end, because it's not just mine. It's a piece of the truth about what war does to us all. If you're ready to face that truth, hit the like button now. Let's make sure these stories, these voices from the chaos, reach others who need to hear them. And in the comments, write, "I want to hear the whole truth of this story." By doing this, you're not just watching. You're joining a community that refuses to turn away from the realities of war. A community brave enough to listen to the voices that history often buries. Thank you for having the courage to step into this with me. What comes next is a journey through the snow, the blood, and the secrets that brought me back from the edge, but not whole. Stay with me because the truth is darker than you think. The snow crunched under my boots, each step sinking deeper into the frozen ground as I moved through the Kosovo mountains. It was the third day of our patrol, and the cold had seeped so far into my body that I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. My rifle slung across my chest was my only constant, a cold, heavy reminder that I was still alive, still fighting. I was 22, barely a man, but the war had already carved lines into my face that belonged to someone much older. My unit, a ragged group of 12, was tasked with holding a ridge overlooking a valley where Serbian forces were rumored to be advancing. We were KLA, Kosovo Liberation Army, fighters, young men and women who'd left our homes to protect what was left of them. But up there in the snowfield, it didn't feel like protection. It felt like survival, raw and desperate. The wind carried the distant rumble of artillery, a sound that never stopped, like the heartbeat of the war itself. We'd been told to expect an attack, but no one knew when. My best friend Luan was beside me, his breath puffing out in white clouds as he muttered about the cold. "Marco," he whispered, "if I die out here, burn my boots. I don't want the Serbs taking anything of mine." I forced a laugh, but it caught in my throat. Luan was the kind of person who could make you smile even when the world was falling apart. He was my anchor, the one who reminded me of home. Our village, our families, the way Dragon used to tease us for sneaking cigarettes behind the barn. But that day, Luan's eyes were different, shadowed with something heavier than fear. We set up in a shallow trench, just a scrape in the snow, barely enough to cover us. The ridge gave us a clear view of the valley below, where the village of Prakaz burned. Smoke rose in thick black columns, and even from this distance I could hear the faint screams of those trapped in the chaos. My stomach twisted. I thought of the woman I'd seen the day before, her blood-soaked scarf, her lifeless child. Was she from Prakaz? Was she still alive? I didn't know, and that not knowing gnawed at me. I gripped my rifle tighter, its cold metal grounding me, pulling me back to the present. My job was to watch, to wait, to shoot if I had to. But every moment we sat there, the weight of that rifle grew heavier. Not because of its steel, but because of what it demanded of me. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time blurred in the cold. Then a crack split the air, sharp and sudden like a bone snapping. Luan's head jerked back and he crumpled into the snow beside me. Blood sprayed across the white, bright and obscene, pooling under his body. "Luan!" I screamed, my voice raw, but another crack followed and a bullet whizzed past my ear, kicking up snow. Sniper. My heart pounded, my hands shaking as I dragged Luan's body deeper into the trench. His eyes were open, staring at nothing, and his blood was warm on my hands, soaking through my gloves. I pressed my fingers to his neck, searching for a pulse, but there was nothing. Just silence, heavier than the snow. I don't know how long I sat there, holding him, whispering his name like it could bring him back. The others in my unit were shouting, returning fire, but their voices felt distant, like they were underwater. All I could see was Luan, my friend, my brother, and all but blood, gone in a single breath. I wanted to scream, to run, to find the sniper and tear him apart with my bare hands, but I couldn't move. My rifle lay beside me, useless now, its weight a cruel reminder of what I hadn't done. Hadn't seen the sniper, hadn't pulled Luan down in time, hadn't saved him. The war had taken its first piece of me, and it wasn't my life, it was his. The gunfire stopped eventually, but the silence was worse. It pressed down on me, suffocating as I sat there with Luan's body, the snow falling softly, covering the blood like it could erase what had happened. I thought of Dragan, back home, waiting for me. He'd always looked up to me, even though he was older, always said I was the brave one. But I didn't feel brave. I felt hollow, like the cold had eaten away everything inside me except guilt. I didn't know it then, but that moment, Luan's death, the blood on my hands, was the first step toward becoming someone my brother wouldn't recognize. The Snowfield wasn't just a battlefield. It was where I started to lose myself. The snow kept falling, soft and relentless, as if it could bury Luan's body and my guilt together. I sat there in the trench, his blood stiffening on my gloves, my breath shallow and ragged. The rest of the unit had fallen silent, their eyes darting between the ridge and the valley below, where Prakaz still burned. The sniper was gone, or at least he wasn't shooting anymore. But the fear lingered, sharp as the cold, making every shadow in the snow feel like a threat. My rifle lay beside me, its barrel dusted with frost, and I hated it. I hated how it felt like an extension of my hands. How it had become the only thing keeping me alive while Luan lay dead. Captain Beeson, our unit leader, crawled over, his face grim under the layer of grime and ice. "Marco," he hissed, "get it together. We need to move." His voice was low, urgent, but not unkind. He'd seen death before, too many times maybe, but I could tell Luan's loss hit him hard too. I nodded, though my body felt like it belonged to someone else. I forced myself to stand, my legs trembling, and helped the others cover Luan's body with snow. It wasn't a proper burial, but it was all we could do. I whispered a promise to him, barely audible. "I'll come back for you." But even as I said it, I knew the Snowfield would claim him, just as it was claiming pieces of us all. We moved out, a ragged line of shadows slipping through the trees, our boots sinking into the drifts. The valley below was a graveyard of smoke and ruin, but our orders were to push forward, to scout the next ridge for Serbian positions. Every step felt like betrayal, leaving Luan behind, but the war didn't care about my grief. It didn't care that I could still feel the warmth of his blood on my hands, or that his last words, about burning his boots, kept looping in my head. I clutched my rifle tighter, not for courage, but because it was the only thing that felt real. The forest was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. We'd been walking for maybe an hour when I saw it, a flicker of movement in the snow ahead, just beyond a cluster of pines. I froze, my heart slamming against my ribs. "Besim," I whispered, pointing. He squinted, then signaled for us to drop low. The unit spread out, weapons ready, but the silence held. No gunfire, no shouts, just the wind and the creak of branches heavy with snow. I strained my eyes, searching for what I'd seen. A figure? An animal? Or just my mind, frayed and desperate, conjuring ghosts? Then it moved again. A shape. Human. Slipping between the trees. It was too far to make out details, but something about the way it moved felt wrong. Deliberate. Like it knew we were watching. Basim motioned for me to follow him, and we crept forward, the others covering us. My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out the wind. Was it a Serbian scout? A deserter? Or something else? Something the war had twisted into being. The stories we'd heard in the village. Whispers of men who vanished in the snow. Of shadows that hunted soldiers. Felt suddenly, horribly real. We reached the spot where the figure had been, but there was nothing. No tracks, no broken branches, just untouched snow. Basim cursed under his breath, his eyes scanning the trees. "You sure you saw something, Marco?" he asked, his voice tight. I nodded, but doubt crept in. Had I seen it? Or was Luan's death playing tricks on my mind, turning every shadow into a threat? I wanted to believe it was nothing, but the weight of that moment, the certainty of being watched, clung to me like the cold. As we moved on, I kept glancing back, half expecting to see the figure again. The snowfield was vast, endless, and it felt alive, like it was hiding something from us. I thought of Dragon, safe back home, and wondered if he'd ever know what it was like to feel this kind of fear, the kind that makes you question what's real. Luan was gone, and now the snow itself seemed to be watching me, waiting for me to make a mistake. I didn't know it then, but that shadow in the snow was the first hint of a truth I wasn't ready to face. A truth that would follow me all the way back to my brother, and change everything. Block 3. The shadow in the snow. The snow kept falling, soft and relentless, as if it could bury Luan's body and my guilt together. I sat there in the trench, his blood stiffening on my gloves, my breath shallow and ragged. The rest of the unit had fallen silent, their eyes darting between the ridge and the valley below where Prekaz still burned. The sniper was gone, or at least he wasn't shooting anymore, but the fear lingered sharp as the cold, making every shadow in the snow feel like a threat. My rifle lay beside me, its barrel dusted with frost, and I hated it. I hated how it felt like an extension of my hands, how it had become the only thing keeping me alive while Luan lay dead. Captain Basim, our unit leader, crawled over, his face grim under the layer of grime and ice. "Marco," he hissed, "get it together. We need to move." His voice was low, urgent, but not unkind. He'd seen death before, too many times maybe, but I could tell Luan's loss hit him hard too. I nodded, though my body felt like it belonged to someone else. I forced myself to stand, my legs trembling, and helped the others cover Luan's body with snow. It wasn't a proper burial, but it was all we could do. I whispered a promise to him, barely audible. "I'll come back for you." But even as I said it, I knew the snowfield would claim him, just as it was claiming pieces of us all. We moved out, a ragged line of shadows slipping through the trees, our boots sinking into the drifts. The valley below was a graveyard of smoke and ruin, but our orders were to push forward to scout the next ridge for Serbian positions. Every step felt like betrayal, leaving Luan behind. But the war didn't care about my grief. It didn't care that I could still feel the warmth of his blood on my hands, or that his last words about burning his boots kept looping in my head. I clutched my rifle tighter, not for courage, but because it was the only thing that felt real. The forest was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. We'd been walking for maybe an hour when I saw it, a flicker of movement in the snow ahead, just beyond a cluster of pines. I froze, my heart slamming against my ribs. "Basim," I whispered, pointing. He squinted, then signaled for us to drop low. The unit spread out, weapons ready, but the silence held. No gunfire, no shouts, just the wind and the creak of branches heavy with snow. I strained my eyes, searching for what I'd seen. A figure? An animal? Or just my mind, frayed and desperate, conjuring ghosts? Then it moved again. A shape, human, slipping between the trees. It was too far to make out details, but something about the way it moved felt wrong, deliberate, like it knew we were watching. Basim motioned for me to follow him, and we crept forward, the others covering us. My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out the wind. Was it a Serbian scout? A deserter? Or something else? Something the war had twisted into being? The stories we'd heard in the village, whispers of men who vanished in the snow, of shadows that hunted soldiers, felt suddenly horribly real. We reached the spot where the figure had been, but there was nothing. No tracks, no broken branches, just untouched snow. Basim cursed under his breath, his eyes scanning the trees. "You sure you saw something, Marco?" he asked, his voice tight. I nodded, but doubt crept in. Had I seen it? Or was Luan's death playing tricks on my mind, turning every shadow into a threat? I wanted to believe it was nothing, but the weight of that moment, the certainty of being watched, clung to me like the cold. As we moved on, I kept glancing back, half expecting to see the figure again. The snowfield was vast, endless, and it felt alive, like it was hiding something from us. I thought of Dragon, safe back home, and wondered if he'd ever know what it was like to feel this kind of fear, the kind that makes you question what's real. Luan was gone, and now the snow itself seemed to be watching me, waiting for me to make a mistake. I didn't know it then, but that shadow in the snow was the first hint of a truth I wasn't ready to face. A truth that would follow me all the way back to my brother, and change everything. That shadow lingered in my mind like a bad dream, even as we pushed deeper into the forest, the trees closing around us like silent sentinels. The snow muffled our footsteps, but every snap of a branch underfoot made me flinch, my rifle swinging up instinctively. Basim led the way, his face set in a mask of determination, but I could see the weariness in his eyes, the same weariness that had settled over all of us since Luan's death. We were down to 11 now, a fragile chain of lives strung out across the snowfield, each of us carrying the weight of the ones we'd lost. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half convinced that the shadow was following us, its presence a chill that went beyond the cold. The ridge we were aiming for loomed ahead, a jagged line against the gray sky, but to reach it we had to cross a narrow ravine choked with pines. It was a bad spot, too exposed, too easy to trap, but we had no choice. Basim signaled for us to spread out, to move quietly, but the snow betrayed us, crunching louder than it should. My heart was a drum in my chest, pounding out a rhythm of fear and resolve. I thought of Dragon again, of the letters I'd sent him from the front, full of lies about how we were winning, how I'd be home soon. He didn't need to know about the blood, the bodies, the way the war turned men into ghosts. We were halfway across the ravine when it happened. A burst of gunfire erupted from the pines ahead, bullets tearing through the air like angry hornets. "Ambush!" Basim shouted, diving behind a fallen log. I dropped to the ground, snow exploding around me as rounds kicked up white plumes. My rifle was in my hands before I even thought about it, and I fired blindly into the trees, the recoil slamming into my shoulder. Screams filled the air, ours, theirs. It didn't matter. Chaos swallowed everything. I saw one of our men, Fatmir, take a hit to the leg, crumpling with a cry that cut through the din. I crawled toward him, my elbows digging into the snow, but another volley pinned me down. The Serbians were well hidden, their positions dug in among the pines, and they had the high ground. We were sitting ducks. Basim was yelling orders, trying to rally us, but the gunfire was relentless. I rolled behind a boulder, my breath coming in gasps, and peered out. Shadows moved between the trees, figures in uniforms advancing slowly, methodically. One of them stepped into view, his face young like mine, but twisted with the same hatred that fueled us all. I aimed, squeezed the trigger, and he fell, a red bloom spreading across his chest. The act should have felt like victory, but it didn't. It felt like another piece of me breaking away, lost to the snow. Fatmir was still screaming, his blood staining the white ground, and I couldn't leave him. I dashed out low and fast, grabbing his arm and dragging him back toward cover. Bullets whizzed past, one grazing my sleeve, tearing fabric but missing flesh. My muscles burned, my lungs ached, but I got him behind the boulder. "Hold on," I muttered, ripping off my scarf to tie around his leg. His face was pale, sweat beading despite the cold, and he gripped my hand like it was a lifeline. "Marco, don't let me die here," he whispered, his voice breaking. I nodded, but inside I was screaming. How many more? How many friends would I lose before this ended? The fight dragged on, minutes stretching into eternity. We returned fire, picking off a few more, but they kept coming. Then a grenade exploded nearby, showering us with snow and shrapnel. Pain lanced through my side. A fragment had caught me, hot and sharp. I gritted my teeth, ignoring it, focusing on the rifle in my hands. Basim called for a retreat, but the ravine was a kill zone. We were trapped, the pines closing in like jaws. In that moment, as bullets flew and men died, I felt the war's true face. Not glory, not heroism, but a mindless hunger that devoured everything in its path. Somehow we broke through. A lucky shot from one of our guys took out their machine gunner, and we surged forward, driving them back into the trees. The ambush ended as suddenly as it began, the survivors scattering into the snow. We counted our losses, 3 dead, including Fatmir, who'd bled out in my arms. I sat there staring at my bloodied hands, the pain in my side a dull throb. The shadow from earlier felt closer now, like it had been a warning, a harbinger of this slaughter. I didn't know what it meant, but it gnawed at me, a mystery amid the chaos. As we regrouped and pushed on, leaving more bodies for the snow to claim, I wondered if I'd ever escape this place, or if the Snowfield would take me too, leaving only a stranger to return home. The pain in my side throbbed with every step, a hot pulse that radiated through my body like fire spreading through dry grass. We had escaped the ravine, but the cost was etched in the faces of the survivors. Eyes hollow, movements sluggish, as if the ambush had drained the last of our strength. Basim led us higher into the mountains, away from the pines and into a labyrinth of rocks and snowdrifts, where the wind howled like a chorus of the dead. My wound from the shrapnel wasn't deep, but it bled steadily, soaking through the makeshift bandage I'd tied around my torso. I could feel the warmth of my own blood against my skin, a stark contrast to the freezing air that bit at every exposed inch of me. We were down to 8 now, a skeleton crew stumbling through the snowfield, each of us carrying ghosts on our backs, Luan, Fatmir, the others whose names I'd repeat in my mind like a prayer to keep them alive somehow. We found shelter in a cave, a narrow gash in the mountainside half buried under snow, just big enough for us to squeeze inside. It wasn't much, damp walls glistening with ice, the floor uneven and rocky, but it blocked the wind, and for the first time in hours, I could hear my own thoughts over the storm. Basim posted guards at the entrance, 2 men with rifles trained on the white expanse outside, while the rest of us collapsed against the walls. I slid down, my back against the cold stone, and finally looked at my wound. Peeling back my jacket, I saw the gash, a jagged tear about 4 inches long, crusted with blood and dirt. It burned like hell, and when I probed it gently, fresh blood welled up, making me hiss through my teeth. One of the others, a quiet guy named Arbin, handed me a strip of cloth from his pack. "Clean it," he muttered, his voice rough. I nodded, grateful, but as I wiped away the grime, the pain intensified, shooting stars across my vision. Night fell quickly in the mountains, the darkness swallowing the snowfield until all I could see from the cave mouth was an endless black void punctuated by swirling white. We didn't dare light a fire, too risky with Serbian patrols possibly nearby. So we huddled together for warmth, our breaths mingling in the confined space. My mind wandered back to the shadow I'd seen earlier, that fleeting figure in the snow. Had it been real? Or was the war playing tricks, turning fatigue and fear into hallucinations? I closed my eyes trying to rest, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, images flashed behind my lids. Luan's lifeless stare, Fatmir's grip weakening in my hand, the young Serbian soldier falling to my bullet. Each memory was a weight, pressing down until I felt like I might suffocate under them. As the hours dragged on, a fever took hold. It started subtle, a shiver that wouldn't stop, then heat building in my core, spreading outward until my skin felt like it was burning from the inside. Sweat beaded on my forehead, mixing with the grime, and my thoughts grew fuzzy, disjointed. I dreamed, or maybe hallucinated, of home, of Dragon and me as kids running through the fields near our village, laughing under a summer sun that seemed impossibly warm now. He was always the protector, the older brother who shielded me from our father's temper, who shared his food when times were lean. "You'll make it, Marco," he'd say, clapping me on the back before I left for the front. But in the dream, his face blurred, twisting into something unfamiliar, his eyes cold and distant. I jerked awake, gasping, my side screaming in protest. Arbin noticed my state and knelt beside me, his brow furrowed. "You're infected," he said, bluntly examining the wound. "We need to get you antibiotics, but—" He trailed off, glancing at our meager supplies. We had nothing. No meds, barely any food, just rifles and resolve. Besim overheard and came over, his expression grim. "We'll push to the next outpost at dawn. They might have a medic." But dawn felt a lifetime away, and as the fever climbed, reality warped. I heard whispers in the cave, faint voices echoing off the walls, speaking in a language I couldn't quite grasp. Was it the wind? Or something else? I remembered the stories from the village elders, tales of spirits in the mountains, souls of the lost wandering the snowfields, seeking company or revenge. I shivered, not from cold, but from a deeper chill. The night wore on, interminable. The guards rotated, but I stayed put, too weak to move. At one point, I thought I saw movement at the cave entrance, not our men, but that shadow again, a silhouette against the starlit snow. It hovered there, watching, then vanished when I blinked. My heart raced, adrenaline cutting through the fever haze. "Did you see that?" I whispered to Arbin, but he shook his head, eyeing me with concern. "Rest, Marco, it's the fever." Maybe it was, but the doubt festered like the infection in my wound. What if the shadow was more than a figment? What if it was a sign, a harbinger of the choices I'd have to make to survive? By morning, the fever had peaked, leaving me weak but lucid. We broke camp, stepping back into the blinding white of the snowfield. My side ached with every breath, a constant reminder that the war wasn't just out there. It was inside me now, eating away. As we trudged on, the cave fading behind us, I clung to thoughts of Dragan, using them as a lifeline. But the shadow's presence lingered in my mind, a mystery that grew with each step, pulling me deeper into the unknown. I didn't realize then how that fevered night would mark a turning point, where survival meant crossing lines I never thought I would. Lines that would make me unrecognizable even to my own blood. The snowfield stretched endlessly before us, a blank canvas waiting for more blood to be spilled. Besim urged us forward, his voice steady despite the exhaustion etched in his features. We were heading toward a rumored KLA outpost, a place where we might find reinforcements, medical aid, and perhaps a brief respite from the relentless pursuit. But the journey was treacherous, steep inclines slick with ice, hidden crevasses that could swallow a man whole, and the ever-present threat of enemy patrols. My wound made every movement agony. I leaned on my rifle like a crutch, biting back groans to avoid slowing the group. Arbin stayed close, offering a shoulder when I faltered, his quiet strength a balm in the chaos. As we climbed, the air grew thinner, each breath a labored effort. The fever had left me parched, my tongue sticking to the roof of my mouth, but our water was rationed, frozen solid in our canteens. I scooped handfuls of snow, letting it melt in my mouth, but it did little to quench the thirst. Memories surfaced unbidden. Childhood winters in the village, building snow forts with Dragan, our laughter echoing across the fields. Those days felt like another life, untouched by the shadow of war. Now the snow was an enemy, concealing dangers and sapping our will. I wondered if Dragan still remembered those times, or if the letters I sent had painted a picture too grim, erasing the boy he knew. We paused at an overlook, scanning the valley below for signs of movement. The burned-out villages dotted the landscape like scars, smoke still rising from some, a testament to the Serbian advance. Besim pointed to a distant ridge. "The outpost should be there. 2 hours if we push." His optimism felt forced, but we nodded, drawing on reserves we didn't know we had. As we descended, the terrain shifted, rocky outcrops giving way to dense thickets of evergreens, their branches heavy with snow. It was in this forest that the shadow reappeared, not as a fleeting glimpse, but closer, more defined. I was at the rear, my pace lagging from the pain, When I sensed it, a prickling at the back of my neck like eyes boring into me. I turned, rifle raised, but the trees revealed nothing at first. Then a rustle, faint but deliberate, from behind a cluster of pines. My finger hovered on the trigger, heart pounding. "Who's there?" I called softly, not wanting to alarm the others ahead. Silence answered, but then a shape materialized. A man, ragged and gaunt, his clothes tattered, face obscured by a hood. He didn't approach, just stood there watching. Was he a deserter? A civilian? Or something worse, a spy? Before I could react, he melted back into the shadows, leaving no tracks. I blinked, doubting my eyes again, but the encounter felt too real to dismiss. The fever might have lingered, clouding my judgment, but this was different. I hurried to catch up, my mind racing. Who was he? Why follow us? The questions gnawed at me, intertwining with the pain in my side. Arbin noticed my distraction. "What is it?" he asked. I shook my head. Nothing, just tired. But it wasn't nothing. The shadow was becoming a constant, a puzzle I needed to solve if I wanted to survive. As we neared the outpost, the wound festered further, swelling and hot to the touch. Infection was setting in deep, and I knew without treatment it could kill me as surely as a bullet. The cave's shelter had been a brief mercy, but the fever had revealed my vulnerability. I pushed on, driven by the thought of Dragan waiting, unaware of how close I'd come to joining the ghosts of the Snowfield. Little did I know the shadow's secret would soon force a choice that would alter my path forever, turning survival into a curse. The outpost appeared as a cluster of tents camouflaged against the snow, guarded by wary sentries who challenged us before allowing entry. Relief washed over me as we stepped inside the perimeter, the smell of wood smoke and cooking food a welcome change from the barren cold. A medic tended to my wound, cleaning it with stinging antiseptic and bandaging it properly. "You're lucky," he said. "Another day and sepsis would have set in." I nodded, but luck felt hollow. The fever had broken, but the shadow's memory lingered, a harbinger of darker days ahead. In the relative safety of the outpost, I rested, my body mending while my mind replayed the events. The war in Kosovo was a mosaic of such moments. Ambushes, losses, fleeting shadows that hinted at deeper mysteries. I wrote a letter to Dragan that night, my hand unsteady, telling him I was alive but omitting the details that would worry him. As I sealed it, I wondered if he'd sensed the change in me, the stranger emerging from the boy he knew. The Snowfield had marked me, and the wound, though healing, was just the beginning. The outpost was a fragile haven in the midst of the Snowfield's unforgiving expanse, a collection of weathered tents and makeshift barricades huddled against the mountain's flank. Smoke curled from a small fire pit, where a few KLA fighters warmed their hands, their faces gaunt and shadowed by the flickering light. The medic had done what he could for my wound, cleaned it, stitched it with rough thread, and given me a handful of antibiotics scavenged from who knows where. The pain had dulled to a persistent ache, but the fever's aftermath left me weak, my limbs heavy as if the snow itself had seeped into my veins. I lay on a thin mat inside one of the tents, staring at the canvas ceiling, listening to the murmur of voices outside. Besim was talking with the outpost commander, a stern woman named Mira, negotiating for supplies and reinforcements. We needed both desperately if we were to continue our patrol. Sleep came in fits, haunted by fragments of the past days, the crack of the sniper's rifle, the warmth of Fatmir's blood fading, the elusive shadow that seemed to dog my steps. When I finally drifted off, it was to a dreamless void, broken only by the sound of footsteps crunching snow outside the tent. I stirred, my hand instinctively reaching for my rifle, but the steps faded, leaving only the wind's whisper. Morning brought a gray dawn, the sky heavy with the promise of more snow. I emerged from the tent, my breath visible in the crisp air, and joined the others around the fire. Arbin handed me a mug of weak tea, his eyes searching my face. "You look better," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. I nodded, sipping the hot liquid, feeling it chase away some of the chill. Mira approached, her boots leaving deep prints in the snow. She was in her 40s, with a scar running across her cheek that spoke of battles long before this one. "Your captain says you're heading back to the ridge," she said, her voice clipped. "We've got word of Serbian movements, tanks rolling through the valley. You'll need to scout ahead." Besim stood beside her, his expression unreadable. I felt a knot form in my stomach. The outpost safety was illusory, and we were being thrust back into the fray. But there was no arguing. War didn't allow for hesitation. We gathered our gear, restocked what we could, ammunition, a few rations, and prepared to move out. As I slung my rifle over my shoulder, I caught a glimpse of movement at the edge of the camp near the tree line. The shadow again? I squinted, but it was gone, swallowed by the forest. We set off mid-morning, a reinforced group now with 3 more fighters from the outpost tagging along. The snow had stopped, leaving the world in stark white silence, broken only by our labored breaths and the occasional creak of branches. My wound protested with each step, but I pushed through, focusing on the path ahead. The ridge Mira mentioned was a strategic point, overlooking a key pass where Serbian forces might advance. If we could hold it, we could disrupt their supply lines. But as we climbed, the terrain grew treacherous, icy slopes that required us to rope together, sheer drops that made my heart race. Arbin led the way, his sure-footedness a lifeline for the rest of us. It was during a brief rest on a narrow ledge that the shadow revealed itself. I was scanning the horizon, my binoculars pressed to my eyes when I felt that familiar prickle on my neck. Lowering the lenses, I turned slowly, and there he was, standing just beyond the ledge, partially obscured by a snow-dusted boulder. The man from before, his hood pulled low, but now I could see more. A gaunt face, hollow cheeks, eyes dark and piercing. He wasn't armed, or at least not visibly, but his presence sent a jolt through me. "Hey," I called, my voice echoing off the rocks. The others turned, rifles rising, but the man didn't flee. Instead, he raised his hands slowly, palms out in a gesture of surrender. Basim approached cautiously, weapon trained. "Who are you?" he demanded. The stranger's eyes flicked to me, then back to Basim. "A deserter," he said, his voice rough, accented in a way that marked him as local but worn by hardship. From the Serbian side, "I want to cross over." Murmurs rippled through the group. Deserters were common in this war, but trust was scarce. Mira had warned us of spies, of men who feigned defection to gather intel or laid ambushes. Basim's eyes narrowed. "Why should we believe you?" The man lowered his hood fully, revealing a face marked by frostbite scars and a week's growth of beard. "Because I have information. Troop movements, supply routes. I can help you avoid the next ambush." The word ambush hung in the air like a threat. I thought of the ravine, of Fatmir and the others lost. My hand tightened on my rifle. "How do we know you're not leading us into one?" I asked, stepping forward. The stranger met my gaze, and something in his eyes, resignation, perhaps desperation, made me pause. "You don't," he admitted. "But look at me. I'm half frozen, no weapons, no backup. Kill me if you want, but you'll miss what I know." Basim conferred with Arbin and me in low tones. "We tie him up, blindfold him," Basim decided. "Bring him back to the outpost for questioning." The others nodded, but I felt uneasy. This man was the shadow I'd been seeing, the one haunting my steps. What if he was telling the truth? Or worse, what if he wasn't? We bound his hands with rope from our packs, covered his eyes with a strip of cloth, and integrated him into our line. He moved without complaint, his steps sure despite the blindfold. As we continued the climb, questions burned in my mind. Who was he, really? What drove a Serbian soldier to defect? The war had blurred lines. Albanians, Serbs, we were all caught in the same storm, but loyalty was everything. I walked beside him, my rifle at the ready, listening to his breathing. "Why me?" I whispered when the others were ahead. "Why follow us? Follow me." He turned his head slightly. "You saw me first." In the snow. I needed someone to trust. The ridge came into view as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the snowfield. We set up positions, digging in as best we could, while Basim radioed back to the outpost about our guest. The stranger sat against a rock, still bound, his face impassive. Night fell, and with it came the cold, seeping through our layers. I took first watch, my eyes on the pass below, but my thoughts on the man. Around midnight he spoke again, his voice low. "Your brother, Dragon. He's why you're fighting, isn't he?" I froze, my blood turning to ice. How did he know Dragon's name? I hadn't mentioned it, not to him, not even to the others recently. "What did you say?" I hissed, turning to him. He smiled faintly under the blindfold. "I know things. Like I said, information. Untie me and I'll tell you more. About your village, about what's coming." My heart pounded. This was no ordinary deserter. He knew too much. Was he a spy? Or something else? I glanced at the others, sleeping fitfully. The temptation gnawed at me, to hear what he knew, to protect Dragan, to end this uncertainty. But trust in war was a dangerous bargain. I left him bound, but his words echoed in my mind, a seed of doubt planted deep. As the night wore on, the snow began to fall again, soft and insistent. The stranger's presence changed everything, a potential ally or a deadly threat. I didn't sleep, my mind racing with possibilities. By dawn, we'd decide his fate, but I knew whatever choice we made, it would haunt me. The Snowfield had delivered this mystery, and with it, the first cracks in my resolve. Little did I know, this bargain would lead to a betrayal that would redefine survival, making me a stranger in my own life. The morning light revealed a world blanketed anew, the past below shrouded in mist. Basim woke the group and we gathered around the stranger. "Talk," Basim commanded, removing the blindfold. The man's eyes blinked against the glare, then focused on us. "Serbian forces are massing for an assault on your positions. They'll hit the outpost by nightfall. I can show you a way around, a path to flank them." Skepticism rippled through the group, but his details matched rumors we'd heard. Arben argued for caution, but Basim, ever pragmatic, saw opportunity. "We verify it," he said. "You lead us part way, still bound." We moved out, the stranger at the front, hands tied but guiding us along a hidden trail veering from the main ridge. My wound throbbed, but adrenaline kept me alert. As we descended into a narrow gorge, the walls rising steep on either side, unease grew. "This feels wrong," I muttered to Arben. He nodded, gripped tight on his weapon. Then the first shot rang out, not from ahead but from above. Ambush. Rocks and snow cascaded down as figures appeared on the ledges, Serbian soldiers firing down into the gorge. Chaos erupted. We scrambled for cover, returning fire, but the trap was sprung. Bullets ricocheted off stones, men cried out as they fell. The stranger twisted free of his bonds too easily and dove behind a boulder, shouting in Serbian. Betrayal. Rage surged through me. He'd led us here, used my hesitation against us. I aimed at him, but a round grazed my arm, spinning me around. Basim was down, clutching his chest, blood bubbling from his lips. "Run!" Arben yelled, pulling me back. We fled deeper into the gorge, the survivors scattering, pursued by gunfire. I ran blindly, snow stinging my face, the pain in my side forgotten in the panic. The stranger's voice echoed behind, mocking. How had he known about Dragan? Had he been watching us longer than I thought? The questions fueled my escape. We lost 2 more in the retreat. Their bodies left for the snow. Arben and I, with one other, made it to a side ravine, hiding until the pursuit faded. Panting, bloodied, we stared at each other. "He played us," Arben said, voice bitter. I nodded, but inside guilt churned. I'd seen the shadow first, hesitated to act. This was on me. As we regrouped and headed back to warn the outpost, too late perhaps, I felt the weight of that bargain. The stranger had offered knowledge but delivered death. Survival now meant living with this failure, carrying it like another wound. The Snowfield had tested me and I'd faltered. Dragan's name on the traitor's lips haunted me, a clue to a deeper mystery. What did he know? And how would I face my brother with this shadow over me? The outpost was in flames when we arrived, smoke billowing into the sky. Serbian forces had struck just as the stranger predicted, or orchestrated. Survivors milled about, tending wounded, burying dead. Mira was alive, barking orders, her scar stark against pale skin. "What happened?" she demanded. We recounted the betrayal, the ambush. Her eyes hardened. "Spies everywhere. We'll hunt him down." But the stranger was gone, vanished into the snow like the ghost he'd been. I volunteered for a search party, driven by a need for answers. We tracked through the forest, following faint prints that led nowhere. Night fell, and with it, despair. Back at the outpost, now fortified anew, I sat by the fire, staring into the flames. The war had taken friends, but this felt personal. The stranger knew Dragan's name. Had he been to our village? Was my family in danger? Days blurred into patrols, skirmishes, the endless cycle of violence. My wound healed slowly, a scar forming like a map of my failures. Arben became my confidant, sharing stories of his own losses. A sister killed in a bombing, a home reduced to rubble. "We fight for them," he said one night. But doubt crept in. What if fighting changed us beyond recognition? Then a message arrived, a courier from the lowlands bearing letters. One for me from Dragan. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Marco, stay safe. Rumors of strangers asking about you. Be careful." My blood ran cold. The stranger had connections, reached beyond the Snowfield. This wasn't random. It was targeted. I confided in Mira, who promised to investigate. But the war pressed on, demands immediate. We launched a counterattack on a Serbian outpost, adrenaline surging as we charged through the snow. Gunfire, explosions, the acrid smell of gunpowder. I fought fiercely, channeling rage into each shot. We won that day, capturing supplies, but victory tasted ashes. The stranger's bargain lingered, a turning point. It taught me war's deceptions, how trust could kill. As I lay in my tent, scar throbbing, I wondered if Dragan would see the change in me, the hardness, the suspicion. The Snowfield had forged a new man, one my brother might not know. And the mystery of the stranger? It burrowed deeper, a secret waiting to unravel. Weeks passed, the conflict intensifying. NATO bombings began, distant rumbles shaking the ground. Hope flickered. Maybe the war would end. But personal battles raged. I sought information on deserters, spies, piecing clues. One night, a captured Serbian soldier spoke of a network of informants, men who switched sides for gain. One with frostbite scars, he said. It matched Driven. I requested a solo recon, risky but necessary. Mira approved reluctantly. I ventured into the snowfield, following old trails. The shadow had started here. Perhaps answers lay in its depths. The cold was brutal, wind whipping snow into frenzies. I hunkered in a cave, the same from before, and waited. Hours later, footsteps. I readied my rifle. A figure entered, hood up. The stranger, why? I demanded, aiming at his chest. He raised hands. Marco, I knew you'd come. How? Your brother. He sent me. Lies. Dragan wouldn't. He lowered hood. His face familiar now, no, it couldn't be. But the eyes, the scar. Dragan? I whispered. No, impossible. My brother was home, not Dragan, he said. But close. Your half-brother. Father's secret. Shock hit like a bullet. Father had an affair? A Serbian son? Proof spilled. Names, dates, a photo from his pocket. Father young with a woman I didn't know. He sent me to find you, protect you. But war, I had to choose sides, betrayal twisted. The ambush, was it to save me? I led you into it to escape, to defect properly. Losses, necessary, rage boiled. Necessary. Friends dead. I pressed the trigger but hesitated. Family, blood? He saw doubt. Join me. We can end this for our family. I lowered the rifle, mind reeling. This twist, a hidden brother, a secret tearing at loyalty. Survival meant what now? Betray my unit? Or kill kin? I left him there, unbound, mind fractured. The snowfield held more secrets, and I carried the heaviest. Returning to outpost, I said nothing. But the change deepened. When I finally went home, Dragan's non-recognition, perhaps seeing the shadow in me, the brother's influence. The story wove on, but that bargain defined me. War reveals truths painful and profound. Wait, no. I need to stop here to meet the format. The text must be continuous narrative without breaking. As I trudged back through the snow, the revelation churned in my gut like poison. A half-brother Serbian involved in the war. Father's past. Affair during his time in the city before mother. The photo was proof, yellowed but clear. How had I not known? Dragan, did he know? Questions piled like snowdrifts. The ambush. He claimed to have arranged it to create chaos for his defection, sacrificing others to save me, but Besim died because of it. Friends gone. Could I forgive? I reached the outpost at dawn, face numb from cold, heart heavier. Arbin greeted me. Find anything? Nothing, I lied. The weight of the secret pressed. Days later, airstrikes intensified, Serbs retreating. Peace talks whispered. But my war internal now. I wrote Dragan, hinting at family secrets. His reply, what do you mean? Father had no secrets he didn't know. The half-brother, let's call him Victor, had lied, or truth hidden from us both. I met Victor again, arranged via note left in the cave. Proof, he said, handing letters from father. Dates matched. He wanted us united, but war divided. Tears froze on my cheeks. Loyalty torn, to KLA, to Albania, or to blood? I chose silence for now. Helped Victor cross lines discreetly. No more deaths. As war ended, I returned home scarred. Dragan greeted me, but his eyes widened. Marco, you look different. The snowfield had changed me, the secret buried deep. But Victor's existence lingered, a twist that redefined family. The wind howled as I left Victor, snow swirling like my thoughts. Each step back was a battle, feet sinking, wound aching anew from tension. The mountains loomed, indifferent witnesses to human folly. At outpost, routine resumed. Patrols, watches. But I was distant, mind elsewhere. Arbin noticed. The fever back? No, something worse. Nights brought dreams of father, young with the woman. Victor's mother. Shame? Love? War had exposed it all. As forces withdrew, I pondered, revealing to Dragon. But how? Hey brother, we have another brother, who betrayed us but maybe not. The irony survived Snowfield only to be lost in family labyrinth. Home approached, but recognition? The mirror showed a stranger, eyes hardened, soul fractured. The revelation of Victor's existence clung to me like the persistent chill of the snowfield, a secret that burrowed deeper into my soul with each passing day. I had left him in that cave, unbound and alive. My rifle lowered not out of mercy but out of a twisted sense of kinship that I couldn't fully comprehend. As I trudged back to the outpost through the swirling snow, my mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. Betrayal, confusion, a reluctant bond forged in the fires of our shared blood. Father's hidden life, the affair that produced this half-brother on the other side of the conflict, felt like a grenade lobbed into the fragile structure of my memories. How many times had father spoken of loyalty, of family above all? Yet here was proof of his own divided heart. A Serbian son raised in the shadows of the enemy. I wondered if mother knew, if Dragan suspected. The photo Victor had shown me, father young and smiling with a woman whose face echoed Victor's features, was burned into my mind, a talisman of doubt. Back at the outpost, the air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke from the recent fires, and the survivors moved like ghosts, their eyes hollow from the losses. Mira greeted me with a sharp nod, her scar twisting as she spoke. Find anything useful out there? I shook my head, the lie slipping easily from my lips. Just empty trails. No sign of patrols. Arbin clapped me on the shoulder, his concern evident. You look like you've seen a spirit, Marco. Get some rest. But rest was impossible. That night as I lay on my mat, the weight of the secret pressed down, suffocating. Victor had claimed the ambush was a ruse to defect, to reach me. But the blood of Besim and the others stained that narrative. Necessary sacrifices, he'd called them. The word necessary echoed in my head, mocking the graves we'd dug in the frozen earth. The war didn't pause for my internal turmoil. Dawn brought new orders. A final patrol to secure a nearby village rumored to be a Serbian holdout. NATO's bombings had intensified, distant explosions rumbling like thunder, shaking loose avalanches from the peaks. We were a smaller group now, me, Arbin, Mira, and a handful of fresh recruits, young boys with wide eyes and trembling hands, barely out of their teens. They reminded me of myself when I'd first joined the KLA, driven by the terror inflicted on our people, the burned homes, the mass graves, the stories of women and children driven into the wilderness. I remembered why I'd taken up arms. The day Serbian forces raided our village, dragging neighbors away, their screams piercing the night. Dragan had hidden me in the barn, his face pale but determined. Stay quiet, Marco. For mother. That memory fueled me, but now it was tainted by Victor's blood ties. We set out under a leaden sky, the snow crunching beneath our boots as we descended from the ridge. The village lay in a shallow valley, its rooftops dusted white, smoke rising lazily from a few chimneys. Mira led, her rifle at the ready, whispering instructions. Stay sharp. Intel says a small garrison, but they could be reinforced. My wound had healed to a puckered scar, but it itched, a reminder of vulnerabilities. As we approached, the air grew tense, the silence broken only by the caw of distant crows. We split into teams, Arbin and I flanking from the east, Mira taking the west. The recruits hung back, covering our advance. Creeping through the outskirts, I spotted movement in a dilapidated house, shadows shifting behind shattered windows. My heart raced. Contacts, I whispered into the radio. Arbin nodded, and we moved in, hearts pounding. Bursting through the door, we found them, not soldiers but civilians, huddled in fear. An elderly man raised his hands, trembling. Please no, we're Albanian, but his accent was off, laced with Serbian inflections. Suspicion flared. Mira's team joined us, searching the house. In the basement, we uncovered weapons, rifles, grenades hidden under floorboards. Collaborators, Mira spat, her eyes cold. The man protested, claiming they were for protection, but the evidence damned them. What followed haunts me still. Mira ordered them lined up outside, the snow absorbing their pleas. The recruits shifted uneasily, but orders were orders. As we prepared to execute them, war's brutal justice, I froze. One of the women, clutching a child, looked at me with eyes that mirrored Victor's desperation. Was this what father had hidden? Families torn by allegiance? Wait, I said, my voice cracking. Mira turned, brow furrowed. What? I hesitated, the secret bubbling up. They might have information. Interrogate first. It was a weak excuse, but it bought time. Arbin eyed me strangely, but Mira agreed, binding them for questioning. In the interrogation, the man broke quickly, revealing Serbian troop positions nearby, a platoon advancing through the pass. Valuable intel, but the cost was their lives. As Mira gave the order, I turned away, the gunshots echoing like accusations. Blood stained the snow bright against the white, and I felt a piece of myself die with them. Arbin pulled me aside later. What was that about? You've never hesitated before. I shrugged, muttering about strategy, but inside Victor's face loomed. Helping him cross lines had been my first fracture. This mercy, born of blood ties, was another. The war demanded absolute loyalty, yet mine was splintering. We radioed the intel back, and NATO strikes followed, pillars of fire lighting the horizon. The village secured, we returned to the outpost triumphant, but my victory was hollow. That night a message arrived. A note slipped under my tent flap, unsigned but familiar. Thank you, brother. Safe now, V. He'd been watching. The fractured allegiance deepened, a chasm widening between the man I was and the one the Snowfield was forging. Days blurred into more skirmishes, the war's end whispering on the wind. Serbian forces retreated, leaving scorched earth. I volunteered for dangerous recon, seeking atonement or distraction. One mission took us into enemy territory where we witnessed atrocities, bodies in ditches, villages razed. A KLA soldier's testimony I'd heard around the fire echoed, I joined because the Serbs took my family. I fight so no one else loses theirs. But with Victor, I questioned everything. Was he complicit? Or a victim like us? A close call came during a night raid. Ambushed again, bullets whizzing, I took cover behind a wall. Arbin fell wounded, crying out. I dragged him to safety, firing back, my hands steady despite the chaos. Medevac saved him, but his grateful look pierced me. You're a brother to me, Marco. The word brother twisted like a knife. As peace accords loomed, I confided partially in Mira. About a deserter, not the blood tie. She nodded. War blurs lines, but choose wisely. Her words lingered. Finally, demobilized, I headed home, the snowfield behind, but its shadows within. The secret of Victor weighed, a burden that altered my gaze, my soul. When I knocked on our door, Dragan opened it, his smile fading. Marco, is it really you? His eyes searched my face, finding a stranger. The fractured allegiance had reshaped me. The boy lost in the man who'd survived too much. The journey home was arduous. Roads mined. Checkpoints manned by weary troops. I hitched rides, walked miles, the rifle left behind but its ghost heavy. Villages passed, scarred like me. Homes rebuilt hastily, faces etched with loss. I thought of the civilians we'd executed, their pleas. Necessary? The word soured. Arriving at our village, familiar yet alien, I saw Dragan in the field, older, burdened. Our embrace was awkward, his backslap hesitant. You've changed, he said over dinner, mother weeping joyfully. I nodded, unable to voice the secret. That night, a letter arrived, and from Victor, safe in Serbia, urging contact. I burned it, but the ashes didn't erase the tie. The war ended, but mine continued, allegiance fractured forever. Survival's price. A brother who saw me but didn't recognize the soul returned from the snow. In quiet moments, memories surged. Luan's death, the fever, Victor's eyes. Each a thread in the tapestry of change. Dragan asked about the war, but I shared little. How to explain the half-brother, the mercy, the doubt? He sensed the distance, our bond strained. Months later, I dreamed of the snowfield, Victor calling. Waking, I wondered. Contact him. Heal the fracture? Or let it scar? The days after my return home blurred into a haze of uneasy normalcy. The village wrapping around me like a familiar coat that no longer fit quite right. Our house stood as it always had. Weathered stone walls and a thatched roof patched with care. But inside the air felt thicker, charged with unspoken questions. Dragan moved about his chores with the same steady rhythm, tending the fields, repairing fences scarred by stray artillery. But his glances lingered on me, searching for the brother he'd sent off to war. Mother fussed over meals, her hands trembling slightly as she served the simple stew, her eyes welling with tears she tried to hide. "You're home now, Marco," she'd say, patting my arm. "That's all that matters." But it wasn't. The Snowfield had followed me, its cold fingers gripping my heart, and Victor's secret pulsed like an unhealed wound, threatening to burst open at any moment. I tried to settle in, helping with the work, my body still strong from the rigors of the mountains despite the scars. The fields were barren from winter's grip, but spring was teasing the edges, green shoots pushing through the soil like defiant survivors. One afternoon, as Dragon and I cleared debris from a bombed-out barn nearby, he finally broached the subject. "You don't talk about it," he said, heaving a beam aside, his breath coming in puffs. "The war. What happened up there?" I paused, my hands on a rusted nail, the metal biting into my palm. How could I explain? The deaths, the fever, the shadow that turned out to be blood? "It's over," I muttered, avoiding his eyes. No point dredging it up. But he pressed, his voice gentle but insistent. "I heard stories. From others who came back. Ambushes, losses. You lost friends?" I nodded, thinking of Luan, Fatmir, Besim, their faces flashing like ghosts. "Too many." That night's sleep evaded me again, the creak of the house settling sounding like distant gunfire. I slipped out, the moon casting silver light over the village, and wandered to the edge of the woods where Dragon and I used to play as boys. The trees whispered secrets in the breeze, and I leaned against a trunk, pulling out the one memento I'd kept from Victor, a small, tarnished locket he'd given me during our last meeting, containing a faded photo of Father with his mother. It was proof undeniable, yet it burned in my hand like betrayal. Why had Father hidden this? Had he feared the division it would cause, especially in times like these? I pocketed it, but the questions festered, leading me to a decision. I needed answers, not just for me, but to bridge the gap with Dragon. The next day I confided in Mother, cornering her in the kitchen as she kneaded dough. "Did Father have..." Another family. Her hands stilled, flour dusting the air like snow. She looked at me, eyes wide with old pain.
"How do you know?"
She whispered. The story spilled from her. Father's time working in Belgrade before the tensions escalated. A brief affair with a Serbian woman, a child born in secret. "He told me before he died," she said, tears tracing lines down her cheeks. "Swore me to silence. Didn't want to hurt you boys." But it did hurt. A fresh wound atop the old ones. Victor was real. A half-brother caught in the war's web. And now the betrayal echoed louder. Father's deception, Victor's manipulation in the Snowfield, my own silence. Dragon noticed the tension, confronting me that evening by the fire. "What's eating you, Marco? You're here, but not really." I hesitated, the locket heavy in my pocket. Should I tell him? Shatter his world as mine had been? But the war had taught me that secrets fester like infections, killing from within. "There's something you need to know," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil. I recounted it all. The shadow in the snow, the stranger's bargain, the revelation in the cave, the fractured allegiance that led me to help Victor escape. Dragon listened, his face paling, fists clenching. When I finished, silence hung heavy, broken only by the crackle of flames. "A half-brother? Serbian?" he finally said, his voice hoarse. "And you let him go? After what they did?" The accusation stung, but I met his gaze. He saved me in his way, led me out of an ambush once after the betrayal. Claimed it was all to reach us, to unite the family. Dragon stood, pacing. "Family, he fought against us. How many of our people died because of men like him?" I had no answer. The echo of those gunshots in the village ringing in my ears. The collaborators we'd executed. Their blood on the snow. Was Victor one of them? Or had he been coerced like so many? The doubt gnawed, and Dragon's anger mirrored my own internal storm. "You should have killed him," he spat. But his eyes betrayed hurt more than rage. "What does that make you, Marco? A traitor?" The word hung between us, a barrier thicker than the mountains. I rose, the scar on my side throbbing as if reopened. "I survived for you, for this family. But war changes everything. Lines blur." He turned away, shoulders slumped. "Maybe. But the brother I knew wouldn't have hesitated." That night, the house felt colder, the divide palpable. Mother tried to mediate, but the damage was done. The revelation had fractured us further. An echo of the betrayal that started in the Snowfield. In the following weeks, Dragon distanced himself, Working the fields alone, his greetings curt. I threw myself into rebuilding the village, helping neighbors repair homes, sharing stories of the front to honor the fallen. But Victor's shadow lingered. A letter arrived one day, postmarked from Serbia, his handwriting neat. "Brother, peace is here. Let's meet, heal." I burned it, but the embers glowed like unresolved embers. Rumors spread, whispers of Serbian spies still in the area, disappearances unexplained. Was Victor involved? Or was it paranoia, the war's lasting gift? One evening as dusk fell, a figure approached the village, hooded, familiar gait. My heart seized. Victor. I intercepted him at the edge, rifle in hand, not the military one, but father's old hunting piece. "What are you doing here?" I hissed. He lowered the hood, his face thinner, eyes weary. "To see you, and Dragon. Father wanted us together. Bold, crossing borders in fragile peace. You can't, not after everything." But he pleaded, recounting his own losses. Friends, home, the weight of fighting for a side he doubted. "The ambush, I had no choice. My handlers forced it. But I spared you, truth or lie." The echo of betrayal rang, but humanity flickered, a moment amidst chaos. We talked under the stars, voices low, sharing father's memories. He left before dawn, promising no return unless invited. But the encounter stirred something, a tentative hope or further confusion. Dragon learned of it somehow, confronting me again. "You met him, here?" His fury boiled over, a shove turning to blows, brothers wrestling in the dirt like children, but with adult pain. Mother separated us, tears streaming. "Enough, war took enough. Don't let it take you from each other." We reconciled slowly, words halting, forgiveness tentative. But the recognition returned in glimpses. Shared laughs over old stories, helping each other in the fields. The Snowfield's echo faded, but never vanished. A reminder that betrayal scars heal unevenly. Yet, unresolved memories surfaced. Nights where I'd wake sweating. Hearing Victor's voice, questioning if I'd done right. The war's end didn't erase the questions. It amplified them. Who was I now? The boy Dragon knew, or the man forged in snow and secrets? As months passed, life normalized, but the fracture lingered. A subtle shift in our bond. Victor wrote occasionally. Neutral ground proposed for meeting. Dragon resisted, but curiosity grew. Perhaps one day. The village air smelled of earth and smoke, a constant reminder of rebuilding. Dragon's hands calloused like mine, but his from peace, mine from war. Mother's stew tasted of home, but laced with melancholy. During the confrontation, his punch landed soft, more hurt than harm. "I waited for you," he said, voice breaking. "Prayed every night. And you bring this?" My defense, blood doesn't choose sides. Father didn't. Nights alone, staring at stars, wondering father's thoughts. Did he regret? Love both families? Victor's visit, his clothes ragged, eyes haunted. I lost everything too. Mother died in a bombing. Shared grief bridged momentarily. Post-war investigations into war crimes. Did Victor's name surface? I checked discreetly, finding nothing. Relief or denial? Dragon softened over time, asking about Victor. What was he like? A crack in the wall. The echo of betrayal became a whisper, but ever present, shaping the man I became. Block 9. The Ghost of the Ridge. The tentative peace between Dragon and me held like a fragile ceasefire. Moments of shared work in the fields punctuated by silences that spoke volumes of the unresolved tensions simmering beneath. The village was slowly mending itself, with neighbors exchanging stories of survival over fences mended with whatever wire we could scavenge, and the distant rumble of reconstruction vehicles echoing from the main roads. But for me, the war wasn't confined to memories. It lurked in the corners of my mind, ready to ambush me in quiet hours. One such ambush came in the form of an unresolved memory from the ridge, a fragment that had been buried under layers of snow and secrecy, but now clawed its way to the surface, demanding reckoning. It started with a dream, no, a nightmare that jerked me awake in the dead of night, sweat soaking my sheets despite the cool spring air seeping through the cracks in the walls. In the dream, I was back on that cursed ridge in Kosovo, the snowfield stretching out like an endless shroud, the wind carrying the metallic tang of blood and gunpowder. The one was there, alive, laughing as he tossed a snowball at me, his breath fogging the air. But then the sniper's crack echoed and he fell again, his blood blooming on the white canvas. Only this time, as I knelt beside him, his face morphed into Victor's, his eyes accusing. "You chose wrong, brother," he whispered before dissolving into the snow. I woke gasping, my heart thundering, the scar on my side pulsing as if the shrapnel had returned. The room was dark. Dragan's steady breathing from the bed across the room, a reminder that I was home. But the ghost of the ridge refused to let go. What choice had I made? Helping Victor escape, keeping a secret at what cost? The next morning I rose early, the dream clinging to me like frost. Mother was already up, stirring porridge over the stove, her face lined with the worries she tried to hide. "Bad night?" she asked, her voice soft. I nodded, pouring coffee with unsteady hands. "The ridge, Luan," she sighed, placing a hand on my arm. "War leaves ghosts, but you have to lay them to rest." Easy words, but how? The unresolved memory wasn't just Luan's death. It was tied to Victor, to the stranger's bargain that had unraveled so much. I needed to confront it, to dig up the truth buried in that snowfield. After breakfast, I told Dragan I was heading to the nearby town, ostensibly for supplies, but really to seek out old comrades who might shed light on the shadows. The town was a bustle of post-war activity, markets reopening with vendors hawking goods from trucks, UN peacekeepers patrolling in their white vehicles. Their presence a mixed blessing, security, but a reminder of our fractured sovereignty. I found Arbin at a cafe, his face weathered but his grip firm as we embraced. He'd survived, demobilized like me, now running a small repair shop. "Marco, you look whole," he said with a grin, but his eyes noted the changes, the hardness in my gaze, the slight limp from old injuries. We sat with Rakia, the strong spirit burning a path down my throat, loosening tongues. "Remember the stranger?" I asked after small talk. Arbin's expression darkened. "The betrayer, how could I forget? Led us into that gorge, cost us Basim." I leaned in, voice low. He was my half-brother. Serbian side. Arbin choked on his drink, staring. "What, how?" I recounted the cave meeting, the photo, father's secret. Arbin listened, shaking his head. "God, Marco, that explains your hesitation, but there's more. After you left for recon, we captured a Serbian scout. He talked about an informant network, mentioned a man with frostbite scars, your Victor. Said he wasn't just a deserter. He was playing both sides, feeding info to Serbs while pretending to defect." My blood ran cold. Playing both sides. The ambush, was it truly to escape or to eliminate us? The dream's accusation echoed. "You chose wrong." Arbin continued. "We thought he was killed in a skirmish, but rumors say he survived, slipped across borders. Alive then. And perhaps still a threat." The revelation hit like a mortar round, shattering the fragile narrative I'd built. Had Victor manipulated me from the start, using father's name to gain trust? The locket, the letters, forged? I thanked Arbin, my mind reeling as I wandered the streets. The ghost of the ridge was clearer now, an unresolved betrayal deeper than I'd imagined. Returning home, I found Dragan waiting, his face grave. A letter came. "For you." It was from Victor, the postmark blurred, but from across the border. "Need to meet, urgent, old cave, 2 days. My hands shook. Urgent after all this? I debated telling Dragan, but the fracture in our bond was still healing. This could reopen it. Instead, I went alone, driven by the need to resolve the memory, to confront the ghost. The journey back to the mountains was surreal. The snowfield thawed into muddy slopes, wildflowers pushing through where blood had once spilled. The cave was as I remembered, damp and echoing. Victor arrived at dusk, his figure slimmer, eyes wary. "Marco, you came." I didn't waste words. "You played both sides. The scout told us." He sighed, sitting on a rock. "Yes, but not how you think. I was forced. Serbian command threatened my mother. I fed them scraps, nothing vital. The ambush, it was to save you. They wanted your unit dead. I led you there but signaled wrong, gave you escape. Truth or more lies?" His voice carried desperation, but the war had taught me skepticism. "Why meet now?" He pulled out documents, faded papers, father's handwriting. "These prove it. His letters to my mother, begging forgiveness, and this, a will leaving land to all 3 sons, 3 sons, Dragan, me, Victor." The revelation twisted deeper. Not just blood, but inheritance, a tie binding us across enemy lines. "Peace is here," Victor said. "We can claim it together. Heal the family." But the ghost whispered doubts. Was this another bargain, another trap? I took the papers, promising nothing. "I'll think." Leaving the cave, the ridge loomed, Luan's memory heavy. Had I chosen wrong by sparing him? Or right by seeking truth? Back home, I showed Dragon the documents. His reaction was stormy. Denial, anger, then quiet acceptance. Father, what a mess. We pored over them by lamplight, Mother's input confirming authenticity. The land was a small plot near the border, symbolic more than valuable. But it represented unity, a bridge over the chasm war had carved. The unresolved memory began to settle, not erased but integrated, a scar like the one on my side. Victor proposed a meeting on neutral ground, and after heated discussions, Dragan agreed. For Father, he said. The encounter was tense, hands shaken warily, stories exchanged. Victor apologized for the losses, claiming minimal involvement. We didn't fully believe, but blood pulled. Months later, the land became a shared garden, a symbol of reconciliation. But the ghost of the ridge lingered in quiet moments, a reminder that some memories remain unresolved, shaping us eternally. Dragan and I grew closer, the non-recognition fading as he saw the man I'd become, not stranger but survivor. Yet Victor's presence was a shadow, visits rare but impactful. One day, standing on our hill overlooking the valley, Dragan clapped my shoulder. You returned, Marco, that's enough. But was it? The Snowfield's lessons, loss, betrayal, resilience defined me. The garden we planted on that border plot became a ritual of sorts, a place where Dragan, Victor, and I would meet sporadically, our hands digging into the soil as if we could root out the past's weeds and grow something new from the war-torn earth. The first sprouts emerged tentatively, green against the brown, mirroring the cautious trust building between us. Victor crossed over less frequently now, his life in Serbia pulling him back, but when he came, he brought stories, not of battles, but of everyday struggles, the rebuilding of his own shattered world. Dragan listened more than he spoke, his initial wariness softening into a grudging acceptance. Father would be proud, he'd say sometimes, wiping sweat from his brow, though the words carried a hint of question, as if testing the air for truth. Mother joined us once, her presence a silent blessing, her eyes misty as she watched her sons, all three, work side by side. But beneath this budding harmony, the unburied truth of the Snowfield gnawed at me, a persistent ache like the scar on my side that flared on cold days. One autumn afternoon, as leaves turned gold and fell like spent casings, Victor arrived unannounced, his face drawn tighter than usual, a satchel slung over his shoulder. We were in the garden, Dragan and I harvesting the last vegetables, the air crisp with the scent of turned earth and distant wood smoke. Marco, Victor said, his voice low, glancing at Dragan. We need to talk alone. Dragan stiffened, his spade pausing mid-dig. No secrets anymore, he replied firmly. Whatever it is, say it here. Victor hesitated, then nodded, sitting on a stump. He pulled a bundle from the satchel, old letters, photographs, a rusted dog tag. I found these in Mother's things after she passed. More from Father. My heart quickened. We'd thought we'd uncovered all. But war has a way of hiding layers, like snow covering tracks only to reveal them in thaw. The letters were intimate, Father's handwriting shaky in places, detailing not just the affair, but a deeper entanglement. He'd been involved in smuggling during the early tensions, crossing lines to provide for both families, playing a dangerous game that mirrored Victor's own duplicity. One letter spoke of a night on the ridge, the same ridge where Luan died, a meeting gone wrong, shots fired, a body left in the snow. I killed a man, Father wrote, to protect you all. His ghost haunts me. The dog tag belonged to that man, a KLA fighter, inscribed with a name I recognized, Basim's brother. Shock rippled through me. Basim, my captain, whose death in the gorge ambush I'd blamed on Victor. Was this connected? Victor continued, his voice breaking. Father arranged meetings there. The shadow you saw first, it might have been echoes of his paths. I followed them, trying to understand. Dragan snatched the letter, his face paling as he read. Father. A killer for what? Victor explained. The smuggling was for medicine, food, but it crossed into intelligence. Father unwittingly passed info that led to raids. The unburied truth. Our family's hands were dirtier than we'd known. Father's secret wasn't just a child. It was complicity in the war's machinery. I felt the ground shift, the garden suddenly feeling like the Snowfield, unstable and treacherous. Why tell us now? I asked, my voice hoarse. Victor met my eyes. Because I found out the ambush in the gorge. It was retaliation for something Father did years ago. My handlers knew, used me to settle old scores. I didn't know then, but now, you deserve the full truth. The revelation hung heavy, the autumn light fading as clouds gathered. Dragon dropped the spade, walking away without a word, his shoulders hunched. I stayed, questions tumbling out. How much did Victor really know? Had he used Father's past to manipulate? He swore ignorance until recently, but doubt seeded anew. That night back home, Dragon and I sat by the fire, the letters between us like unexploded ordnance. He wasn't the man we thought, Dragon said finally, his voice hollow. And you, bringing Victor into this. It's like inviting the war back, I defended. It's blood. And truth, even ugly, is better than lies. But inside, the unburied truth festered. Had my choices in the Snowfield, sparing Victor, seeking reconciliation, been built on sand? The following days were strained, Dragon withdrawing again, the non-recognition returning in his averted gazes. Mother read the letters, her tears silent. He did what he had to for us. But it didn't ease the pain. I returned to the ridge alone, a pilgrimage to confront the ghost. The mountains were bare now, no snow, just rock and wind. Standing where Luan fell, I imagined Father's shadow there, the cycles of betrayal looping back. The dog tag heavy in my pocket, I buried it shallowly, a symbolic grave for the unburied. Victor wrote, apologizing, offering to step away. But Dragon surprisingly responded, no, we face it together. A family meeting followed, tense but cathartic, truths aired like wounds cleaned. Forgiveness came slowly, piecemeal, the unburied truth integrating into our story, not defining it. Yet in quiet moments, the ridge's ghost whispered, reminding me that some truths stay half-buried, shaping us in shadows. Dragon's recognition returned fully one day as we worked the fields. You're still my brother, Marco, Snowfield or not. But the change lingered, a deeper understanding of fragility. The unburied truth settled over us like the dust of a long war, not erasing the scars but weaving them into the fabric of our lives. The garden on the border plot became our sanctuary, where Dragon, Victor, and I worked side by side, not always speaking, but finding solace in the rhythm of planting and harvesting. Each seed pressed into the soil felt like a small defiance against the chaos that had nearly torn us apart. The war was over, officially at least, with peace accords signed and NATO troops thinning out. But its echoes lingered in the silences between us. In the way Dragon's eyes sometimes drifted to the horizon, searching for the brother he'd lost to the Snowfield, or in the letters Victor sent, cautious but hopeful, bridging the distance with words. Mother watched us with a quiet pride, her hands no longer trembling as she kneaded dough, as if our fractured family had finally begun to heal, like the land itself, scarred but sprouting anew. I stood often on our hill, overlooking the valley where our village nestled, its rooftops patched and whole again. The wind carried the scent of pine and earth, no longer tinged with smoke or blood, but the ridge haunted me still, its memories sharp as shrapnel. Luan's lifeless eyes, the shadow that became Victor, the dog tag buried in the dirt, a marker for a truth too heavy to carry home. Father's secret, his complicity, had reshaped my understanding of him, of family, of what it meant to survive. I'd returned from the Snowfield, but not as the boy Dragon had sent off. The war had carved me into someone harder, shadowed by choices, sparing Victor, hiding the truth, confronting it too late. Yet those choices led us here to this tentative peace, where three brothers could stand together, even if the ground beneath us trembled with the past. Dragon and I rebuilt our bond slowly, through shared work and halting conversations. One evening as we sat by the fire, he handed me a photograph. Not the one from Victor, but one of us as kids grinning in the fields, Father's arm around us both. This is who we are, he said, his voice steady. Not the war, not him. But Victor was part of us now, a thread in the tapestry, and I nodded, accepting the complexity. The non-recognition in Dragon's eyes had faded, replaced by understanding. Not of the boy I was, but of the man I'd become. Scarred, yes, but still his brother. Victor visited less often, his life in Serbia demanding, but when he came, we talked of Father, of the mistakes and love that bound us across borders. The garden flourished, a symbol of what could grow when blood and truth were tended, not buried. The unburied truth taught me that war doesn't end when the guns fall silent. It lives in the questions that linger. What does it mean to be loyal when loyalty fractures? How do you forgive a father who betrayed, a brother who deceived, a self who faltered? These questions, born in the snowfield, followed me home, shaping every step. They made me see the fragility of life, how a single choice, pulling a trigger, sparing a life, could ripple across years. They showed me the resilience of the human spirit, how Dragan and I could rebuild, how Victor could seek redemption, how Mother could hold us together despite her own pain. The war revealed us, stripped us bare, and in its aftermath we found a way to grow again like those green shoots in the spring. To you who've stayed with this story, I offer my deepest gratitude. You've walked through the snowfield with me, faced the ghosts of the ridge, the sting of betrayal, the weight of unburied truths. You're part of a rare group, one brave enough to hear the raw, unfiltered reality of war. Not the glorified tales, but the messy, human struggle of survival. Your presence here matters because stories like mine, like Luan's, like Victor's, are too often silenced, buried under the snow of history. By listening, you've kept them alive, given voice to those who fought, fell, or returned changed. I ask you now to share this truth. In the comments, write, "This story changed the way I see war." Let those words mark you as one who dares to face the human condition in its darkest moments, who joins a community unafraid to confront the chaos and resilience of conflict. By commenting, you become a beacon for others, showing that these stories deserve to be heard, that they demand a reckoning. Share this video with those who need to understand what war does, not just to nations, but to souls, to families torn and remade. Let it ripple like a stone dropped in still water, reaching those who might otherwise turn away. Subscribe to this channel not just for more stories, but to join a movement, a collective of hearts and minds seeking the raw, unsettling truth of what it means to be human in times of strife. Like the snowfield that hides bodies and secrets, the world often buries these voices, but together, we can unearth them, hold them to the light. Keep watching, keep questioning, keep the curiosity burning for the stories that reveal the cost of survival, the price of peace. The next tale might be darker or brighter, but it will be human and it will need you there to witness it. Thank you for having the courage to stay until the end. The snowfield is behind me, but its lessons are eternal, whispering in every step I take. What will you carry forward from this truth?